Staying with us on Point now, the World Economic Forum has announced that the 2019 annual meeting in Davos is set to focus on shaping a new architecture for the next wave of globalization. That's their theme. Elsie Kanza, who is the head of Africa at WEF, joins me live via Skype from Geneva. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Elsie, how is the theme at Davos decided and how much input goes into that?
The theme is very much a collaborative exercise, which means that it takes into account consultation with different stakeholders from the various communities of the forum, as well as taking into account the various developments that are shaping the world, particularly over the last year, and the trends that are set to influence the year ahead.
Globalization has led to growth, but it's also deepened inequality. How, if any way, does WEF intend to address this and bring this out during the course of the discussions that will take place?
Indeed, you're right. Globalization is not a new concern. What is a concern is that the failures of globalization in the past still have not been dealt with. So whether it is rising income inequality or jobless growth, that is causing people to have less faith in their governments and leading to nationalistic tendencies and focuses on sort of disconnecting with the world. But as you appreciate, we're living in a much more integrated world, and this calls for us to work much more in a concerted way to address the failures of the past, and hence this call for a renewed sense of urgency with respect to global cooperation.
In the way that you're looking at that global cooperation, Klaus Schwab, who's the founder of the World Economic Forum, says people are still approaching issues of globalization with an outdated mindset. What kind of mindset do we need to have going into Davos and, of course, just on a day-to-day basis? Well,
one example is just what is happening in the manufacturing space, for example, where we're seeing considerable amount of automation because of the fourth industrial revolution. So more use of robotics, which is replacing jobs that were previously held by people. So when you think about different parts of the world that still believe that industrialization going forward needs to be labor intensive, this needs a rethink. The fourth industrial revolution is destroying some jobs, but it's also creating new opportunities. So how can we reskill this labor that's being displaced by machines in the manufacturing space by equipping them with skills to do new jobs in the fourth industrial revolution?
Do you think that there needs to be a different way of looking at that mindset shift when it comes to emerging economies versus the more developed ones?
There is, with respect to what we have hitherto considered traditional pathways to development, going through the industrialization phase before moving into the service industries. It also means taking into account new pressures that we're seeing arising from climate change that is changing the context within which emerging economies can operate. At the same time, with decentralization of manufacturing, where it's easier to produce at home for local needs, for example, through 3D manufacturing, it's shifting the global supply chains. So in this space, there's a need for much more imagination amongst all of us, because we need to create shared futures together so that nobody is left behind.
There is this protectionism, or this rhetoric around protectionism, that seems to be increasing. How do you have a conversation about the importance of globalization and going forward into the fourth industrial revolution without isolating powers who don't believe in that but contribute significantly to world trade and the economy?
Well, one is by ensuring we don't exclude them from the conversation, so we invite them to the table. We need all the voices, again, because we have this shared planet. And if we take into account, for example, just the environment and what is happening with plastics in our oceans, for instance, it's not possible to isolate ourselves. And so therefore, the opportunity to, one, leverage the forum's neutrality, to have everyone join the conversation, and then really taking the time to share the insights that highlight the areas where we have common interests and can arrive at common purposes that results in an inclusive and sustainable future for all of us.
Elsie Kanza, the head of Africa at the World Economic Forum, thanks so much for your time on SABC News, joining us live via Skype there from Geneva. Let's come back to South Africa now.